We want every aspect of the building to feel as if, there is something for you here, and we are constantly keeping you engaged here.
We're here on the Daktronics Experience podcast, live in person at Gillette Stadium, and we are with Woody and Doug today. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing good. Thanks for having us,
Of
guys.
course,
Yeah.
Matt's here with us as
Yep.
well.
I'll say we're doing good. The big win last night definitely helps with morale.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're going to start with just kind of a quick introduction of each of you to kind of know what you guys do here and how you got here. So, Doug, can you start?
Yeah, I'm Doug Klausen. I'm the Senior Director of AV and Broadcast Systems. I just passed a year anniversary here at Gillette Stadium, but I was on the other side of this table, I guess you could say, for 9 years at Daktronics since 2014. I started out as an application engineer and covered New England, New York. So, I've been a part of Gillette Stadium for years now and really working with Abby, working with Woody, Dan, to just kind of understand how the most of the LED systems here. And background for there, where I came from, weird career, I guess, or not traditional, but I think that's pretty, common, I think, in this industry. I knew I wanted to work in sports, but I don't know. It's weird. Did you guys ever hear of a show called Sports Night?
No.
It was on ABC. Yeah, it was this kind of scripted television show that was followed like a Sports Center competitor.
Okay.
And I was like, is this a real thing, watching the show of like these people working behind the scenes of like people who are producers and on-air hosts? And I was like, well, I'm going to work in sports because this is exactly what I want.
What do you want to do?
So I started working in video, and then I went to Indiana University and I majored in sports communication broadcasting. I worked for the football team while I was there. I worked at a local PBS station, and then I left college and I went and worked in local news, and I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to get to ESPN eventually or something like that. Yeah. And then I started doing news gathering for out in Phoenix. I took a job on a random posting, and I drove cross country and started out in Phoenix. That was in 2008. And then I got to know people at the Arizona Cardinals, and I thought, working for a team sounds really great. Mm-hmm. And that was when the Cardinals were good. So I was, not that they're not good now, but it was coming off of a Super Bowl runner-up when Kurt Warner was there. And 2009, I transitioned 2011, I transitioned working for the Arizona Cardinals. So I worked for Laura Johnson, who you probably know, and Michael Connor. Okay. So I learned from them, and then I left for Chicago in 2014, and I became an app engineer, and then my career at Daktronics, and then they came and kind of created this position out of, I don't want to say thin air, but I think the amount of growth and technology we had here, they were looking for someone to spearhead everything, and so I picked up leaving Louisville with my family, and I've been here about a year since.
Nice.
So, nice. Yeah.
And then even thinking of, when you went from the Cardinals to Daktronics, had you always heard of Daktronics, I imagine? Or
first iteration of hearing Daktronics was probably, again, like the all-sport controller when I was at Indiana University.
Nice.
Again, somebody was like, hey, can you operate the clock? And I was like, yeah, I could push a few buttons. So, like, sometimes I'd push a few buttons while I was there. But, I mean, the full in-game experience use of LED displays was at the Arizona Cardinals and what was University of Phoenix Stadium, now State Farm Stadium. Yeah. And so I just cut my teeth learning from Laura Johnson, who trained me, Katrina Stackpole, who trained me while I was out there. Scott Blankenship was my field engineer. Ed Acuna was my field engineer.
Name dropping.
I mean, I owe a lot to my, I guess, education of LED from DAC and from others who just learned off DAC as well, to just show me the way. And a lot of it was just getting knee deep in the weeds.
I love it. You're not the first person to answer all sport. I can't remember. We were talking to an athletic director one time, and they said, running an all sport back when I was younger for an event is when I first heard about Daktronics.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. And maybe we'll switch over to Woody and kind of get your background and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, I'm going to say many less names and many less places than Doug that you'll recognize. But so I've been with the Kraft Group for, it'll be 21 years in about a month. My background originally was civil engineering. The way I got here, the company I worked for had the Crafts and the New England Patriots as a client when this stadium was being built. So I was on the site utility infrastructure, land development side of things as a design engineer. I'd gone to school for civil engineering, but my company was out here as a semi-design build basis. I was working out of a construction trailer, working on construction details while the property was being developed and the stadium was, working from the ground up. So I went back to my office for, a month maybe. I got a phone call from one of the guys, Dan Krantz, who's our senior vice president of construction development, and he said, "Hey, the Crafts have maybe a year's worth of work for us to kind of come back. We let you worked with our team as a consultant. We'd like to come on, work with us as an employee." And like I said, they told us about a year. Maybe more, but we have a little bit of development stuff to do. And as I say, that was almost exactly 21 years ago that I came here.
Long year.
Yeah. So
keep adding.
Yeah.
Right,
And that is in a nutshell what I do is we are the construction wing of the Kraft Group, and so primarily I focus on stuff that's in and around Foxborough. But as a group, we are we oversee plan, budget, schedule, capital improvement projects for the Crafts. So it could be pretty, it can be far-reaching in that they've got a whole bunch of other businesses besides here at the stadium. But again, primarily my job is spending time here in Foxborough, and it could be anything from overseeing the construction of something, and I keep pointing, but we're talking, so people can't see what I'm pointing at. But the construction of this north end zone, expansion, renovation. In that particular role, we hired a general contractor. We worked through a schedule a couple of years ago. We worked through the budget and the permitting process through the town to get the project, buildable, and then oversaw the process of building to its final execution. So, and that's true for all things big and small. From a LED perspective, when we first moved into the building, we had these little postage stamps of LED boards with incandescent bulbs for the scoreboard, showing the name, the letters of the teams and the score, So I've been around for a lot of those upgrades where we've, improved sort of piecemeal one by one, and then ribbon boards, and then skylight boards, and, been through kind of all of it from a construction perspective, again, with my focus being on, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take to build it? And how are we going to get guys into the building and build it without, interrupting events? That's my life.
And is it kind of within the stadium then again? Because this is our first time being here. And I didn't even know about the Patriots place. Does that kind of tie into what you do?
Yes. That was back in that era, which was 2007, 2008, 2009.
That was my next question: is when did that kind of all start up?
Yeah, that era was the same role. We were overseeing a general contractor that we hired, but we were managing again budget and schedule and quality control, and working with our colleagues who are working in house who would eventually manage the property. Working with those folks to again ensure that once the project was built, it would actually, operate and function correctly for the folks who were going to run it once we walked away. So the development of the property out and around the stadium, parking lots across the street, land acquisition, kind of you name it, we've been in the thick of it. So it's been pretty exciting.
So you mentioned the scoreboards, which was kind of nice. I was just kind of curious, how many main end zone displays have you overseen the construction of?
Right. I should have thought about this before walking up here. But the north end zone, there was the upgrade to the north and south end zones in 2010. And I remember the date roughly because MetLife Stadium was under construction. I remember we went and saw that. Rutgers had just improved their video boards, and I remember we went and saw that with DAC folks to see how that was going. So it was definitely that year. It was to the 2010-2011 season, and then as I say, the ribbon boards, the skylight boards, I think were 2 years prior to that. I think it may have been the 2007, 2008 season that those skylights were infilled. And as I say, the ribbons slowly but surely, I believe 2012, 2013. So it's been more than 10 years ago now that we did a bunch of ribbon board improvements. But yeah, I've been there for all of it.
I don't think there's a year in my involvement with Gillette Stadium, even whether Daktronics or not, where LED has not been a component somewhere. I mean, every single year.
Something.
Like from the beginning of 2014 and on, it was either like a control upgrade or
Yep.
add on of LED. So like
Yep.
Woody and Dan are very much the guys that would, if we can find a location for LED, we're going to put it there.
Yep.
And so, I mean, when you think about other stadiums, I just, it's hard for me to comprehend how much engagement we have of just technology in this building, and specifically from in the bowl. Like, I mean, we just have so many areas that we can engage our fans with and our patrons and our events team and really offer a one-of-a-kind experience. You know, I think that's one, and we try to do that outside the bowl too. We're getting better at that. I mean, Woody and I were definitely lead in terms of, you know, the new pylons that are out there and the new Enel Plaza, which again, I think those are becoming a trend that we have. But I mean, we engaged with a company called DCL that helped us kind of come up together with a concept, but you know, we really took it from paper to something that is tangible out there, and it's exceeded my dreams. I
would agree.
Yeah,
They look great. They show up on all sorts of background shots when the news folks do their stand-ups. You see these really, it's definitely activated the plaza. It's a major improvement. And our friends at Patriot Place are in the midst of building a few more of them throughout the retail complex as well, just as to add a little bit of continuity of that look and feel to the entire property.
The trends is what you were mentioning too, right? Because it's even, you mentioned Patriots Place has been here for a little while, but more and more stadiums and arenas are building up these entertainment districts around them. And it seems like even the pylons are kind of that way of merging the stadium with that back and forth. Is that kind of what you're seeing then from the, construction side of things too? Is that, right? I mean, you have tailgating, you have a whole bunch of open spots. So I've heard there's urban tailgating when the stadium's in like a downtown. Sure. And we have open space like this trying to just create things for people to come early and stay late.
Yeah, certainly. That's the desire. Once again, a little out of my wheelhouse. I help build it, but to answer your question, certainly the requests have been plentiful of ideas that folks have to continue to improve the experience, and certainly from a technology perspective. I mean, again, the new entry canopy. I don't know if you have a chance to walk through that north end zone yesterday. You know, the main entry canopy where you folks get sort of security screen to come in. Just the fact that we've got a nice LED ribbon board outside of that to try to help spread the word of this is the place to go, and this is where you're supposed to be.
Sure.
Again, it speaks volumes to the fact that the technology is a key part of how we operate.
Yeah, and I think that's what we try to do, is that we're trying to create experiences for our fans where they don't feel as if we just created this canopy that allows us to security screen you anymore. We want them to feel like this is something that proves to be more of providing information, providing, you know, some kind of engagement beyond that, where it's just like, oh, I guess I just walk up to this canopy and the only purpose it serves is essentially to screen you. There's Wi-Fi there. There's an LED board there. We're trying to give you the game experience before you even get to your seat. And so the pylons do that too. I mean, the pylons serve all the way out into the parking lot. And if you're coming off the train, you could see that pylon right as you get off and you start engaging with it. You start feeling like, okay, I'm part of the experience now. I'm part of that. And so, you know, we are trying to do that on a continual basis. And again, that is, I think, I don't want to say difficult, but, you know, we're not like other stadiums where we have the town of Boston in our backyard, you know, or we have the town of Denver, or, you know, wherever else you've been. I think we're more like a Green Bay, I guess you could say, where we need to create a destination for people to come out here, and we do a really good job of it. But we need to evolve, and we need to do better. So I think, as you know, as part of Woody's team is like, when we're thinking about physically renovating, what do we need to do from a technology perspective to make that? And so we've had a good hand in hand, I think, in this last year, considering everything that we've done. I mean, you know, when you guys were talking to Abby and Jen, I mean, you know, they brought up the control room and the LED end zone, but I think, you know, other things is also, we activated IPTV, we put those pylons in, we put that Ticketmaster gate in, you know, we've done, you know, more engagement, the GP atrium. I think that's the other side of it. It's like, we have this beautiful north board, and again, it is still beautiful, but like, we created this new club experience that is, I think, going to be a prototype for how we go about renovating the rest of the building with technology. And we knocked it out of the park and created something that I have not seen, where we have this large glass experience that people can see into this experience that, you know, is only open to people who can, you know, who want to buy into it or attend. But I mean, the displays on the backside are just as visually engaging as our north board. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean the amount of pixels that we have in there compared to the north board it's pretty darn close. I mean, the north board is 1,800 pixels tall. The GP Atrium ones are 2160 tall. So there's technically more pixels in height, than it is, and the length of the amount of pixels in those two boards combined is actually more than the north, even though it's smaller in footprint.
Right.
But
Pixel pitch changes things.
And I think that's something that we, when we were looking back at, I think what to do. The ability to just say, let's make it LED is a lot more tangible now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's become, as we've become more comfortable with what it takes to build it, certainly with, experts on your team who've helped along the way and you in your prior life, it allows you to think of it as a part of the design process as opposed to an add-on, and it just, as I say, we've had a lot of great experiences with different folks on the Daktronics side of things that have made that part of, made that an easy thing for us to picture and visualize and eventually execute too.
Yeah. And that north end zone is completely new, right? It used to be open and now it's kind of closed off and the board kind of goes over.
Yesterday, remember? Like,
Right.
So it kind of creates even a tunnel to the field, which you were talking about the plaza displays, and it made me think of this. You can see them from the parking lot, but you even look towards the stadium, you can see the field.
Yeah.
And you can see the displays lining up as you follow them to the field.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, that's got to be unique. I don't know that I've seen that many other places, right? That you can just kind of walk and see the field from there, even if that's
on
not
that approach.
Yeah, on that approach.
I mean, I'd take the street to seat. I think I first heard of it from DAC fellow person Bill Hadsel, and I doubt he came up with it or whatever, but that is definitely a term that I am always thinking about, and I think from our side of things, Abby and Jen do an awesome job with bringing our fans in. But the other thing is we have to create systems that run 24/7. And so that's a lot of my job too, is that, keeping things going for 24/7 and always engaging our fans from event to event or from use to use. Abby and Jen run the game from yesterday and we come up with a great win. But you guys were in here earlier. We had a radio event down in Optum that's using the board for something that transitions over to our events team. So we have to think very carefully about not only how do we just build something big and great on game day, but how do we build something that's going to be useful for all the different departments in here, and how seamless can we make that experience so that coming off a victory last night, we give somebody something that says, okay, I feel like I'm in the bowl still, and allows them to feel like it's part of the game day experience, even if we can't be here for the game day.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm trying to think of, throwing it back to you, Woody, then, we know what this board was installed, obviously, before this one. But when you're first brought into a project like that, right? I mean, a huge undertaking, because it was the original idea to do both of these, but you had to do them in phases. Kind of maybe just walk me through, how is that process? Are you involved, too, on the design, look, size of everything, and how'd you lay it all out?
Yeah, we'll help kind of foster the conversation with the design team. So we'll hire professional engineers on the structural and MEP and architectural side of things, obviously, to work with us and with the folks who are coming up with the cool ideas. So certainly there is, our role is to try to keep all the folks in the same place. Keep an eye on, again, budget, schedule, answering questions to get answers back, I should say, to those questions, soon enough so that we can order the LED product, because we know it's going to take X amount of weeks or months to get here, or a year, or whatever the case may be. So it's trying to, certainly, our role is to try to continue to keep the conversation going, get the right answer, but also in a timely fashion so that we can, order product and get it here soon enough. So the South End Zone board was a unique one. It was, like a lot of other people can comment on, it was a COVID type COVID era type project that begun in technically maybe the end of 2019, but as we rolled into the shutdown, we hit pause, like a lot of people did. And so it didn't really get unveiled, I guess, technically until the 21 season, if I remember right.
We got it, but it was under the gun.
Yeah, and it really was. I mean, it was like, whatever. It probably is removed from my brain because of the post-traumatic stress, but it was like...
Yeah, we unveiled it for a revolution game in the middle of July. And I remember being on. I mean, I know you guys were here on site, and we were like making electrical connections at the end, and like we're coming out and like making sure that Jen and Abby like have the Rev show ready to go. Because again, like you look at it now compared to the North, and you're like,
it is funny.
How is that thing like our biggest concern? And then but we've always pushed the envelope here.
That is
in terms of
certainly
giving the fans something that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
But I mean, even like this site is unique in the sense of like the letters. Like this is the first site that I was ever a part of where we had the pucks
the
and
stadium
the letters,
signage,
and it was and it became
integrated.
such a unique thing that we had to do it for the new letters over there. And I mean, you could speak to that process, but that was a learning experience.
Was that with DCL again? Correct.
It was.
So on that lettering, what was it like working with them and with our team to make that all come together?
They had, from our perspective, they had only good things to say about working with your team because you can imagine just the kind of geometry of making square, you guys know, obviously it's your world, square modules, thank you. It's fit into these curvy, like the letter G. How the heck do you make that work with all squares, right? So the amount of really, thoughtful, also to not be wasteful, really thoughtful layout to make it so that we weren't just blasting a whole bunch of LED and then just covering half of it by making, cutouts or whatever to make it look like the letters. Really, the teams worked hand in hand. And DCL, as I say, had great things to say about your team. And it was a very iterative process of size and feel, sharing it back to get the technology to fit that size and feel, and then handing it back to the sign guys to eventually, build it and rig it up there and put it up on the roof and make it look like it's supposed to be there, which they did a good job of. Yeah,
with a huge lighthouse in the background too.
With a huge lighthouse and not blocking the view when you're up on the top of the lighthouse is a pretty important feature for sure.
So you're obviously involved in that then, the lighthouse?
That was all part of the scope of that project, that north end zone expansion. It again, not to go backwards here, but we truly infilled multiple levels of the stadium. What was the end of the seating bowl on the west side and the end of the seating bowl on the east side are now connected at the upper concourse and these multiple suite levels, the club level. And so with that, the building was infilled, but the lighthouse got massively, upgraded and heightened and was wider and all of the above. And the plaza itself, again, we were going back talking about those pylons. The plaza itself, it never really felt like you had arrived. I think, Doug, you talked on that before about how you felt like even though you're outside, you kind of feel like you're a part of the action now, especially on an event day.
Yeah.
The plaza itself before, day one when the stadium opened, it was truly like a bunch of rows of gates. There's a ticket office building and the pro shop, but it was like parking lot, curb line. You'd walk 30 steps and you're at a gate and there really wasn't any sense of arrival or a place to, certainly not a place to congregate. Patriot Place in 2007, 2008 allowed for some of that to get slightly improved, and the Hall of Fame was built in that same duration. So when that happened, the plaza was, I will say, modestly improved, but it still never really got to that point where you felt like you were there and connected. Whereas now, the plaza got significantly larger. I think we added 4.5 acres of plaza space, if that makes sense, or at least renovated and added to create about 4.5 acres of plaza space. It really has turned into something, like I say, even now, day after a game, it's just it's a great place to be. Feel like you're here, you're part of the action.
Yeah, Doug took us out there yesterday, and there were people out there taking pictures. They had lettering and, like that said, hats next to some of those displays, and people were just staggered at each display taking pictures. So it was kind of cool to see, that entertainment district feel like everybody's coming together early to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, I think that's what we want. That's what we're trying to gather. We'll continue to grow that, I think, moving forward. But, we just think about what we have coming up where we have, we had Sunday Night Football there. Football Night America came out and did their set before the game on the plaza. And I'm just thinking, I think we think to ourselves of like, we'll have these LED pylons in the back and we'll be able to promote ourselves. And we have the GPH room, we have the lighthouse. I mean, all of that goes into a visual experience of, as I walk up to something, what is going to be iconic in this bit? What's going to be iconic here? And I think, the ability of LED to get smaller and tighter and more feasible allows us to be more, give a more integrated look into what we want. We're not just like, we're not looking at billboards anymore. We need this large structure. We need a lot of metal to house everything or to get something up and running. I mean, if you didn't know, like there is a lot of steel that goes into making those pylons, but I mean, you would think that they'd been there for a while.
Yeah.
And they
totally integrated.
And they totally blend in. And the same thing with like our ribbons that service some of our gate entrances. I mean, all of that, or like you guys were making the comment about the club boards that are out there. I mean, again, those look, into my opinion, not that we just took a space and said, let's just put an LED board there and make sure that it operates and puts up a sponsor. I think there's a conscious effort from the construction side and from a technology side to say, if we make this investment, how do we do it right? How do we do it, carefully, but also how do we make sure that it's going to be engaging and at its best, moving forward?
I was going to say, like, even in that space, it's like you've added, because I wasn't there before, that whole extra suite area is like you've added another premium space where they can go in, and with both those huge displays on the wall, you can keep up with multiple other games in the league while you're keeping up with the game on the field. It's like you're not going to miss anything while you're in that area.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then is it, so we've kind of talked about that board, the puck lettering, maybe the coming in and all of the different pylons then. So maybe walk us through then a little bit, Woody, of, and I know loosely, but I can't remember exactly how to explain this. It was kind of part of the board was built last year, while some of it was getting ready to be built this year. Kind of how was that organized, or how'd that go?
Yeah, there was a unique aspect of having MLS soccer and NFL football over the course of it.
We don't have a time off.
There's where you're building for whatever 18 months, and you've got a lot of things that don't want to wait for you and won't wait for you. Yeah. A lot of that, as silly as or simple as it may sound, the structure, the physical columns and beams, the structure really drove a lot of that discussion. So where we had removed all the previous North End Zone entities, the scoreboard, the video board, ad boards, all that stuff was gone, demolished. The old lighthouse had been demolished. On the schedule, it was clear that MLS soccer was starting, in the coming spring, and football was not too far behind, and concerts get all wedged, all over the place. And there was a reason why our folks, would be looking for something to use in the North End Zone for our fans to have, something to watch or to view. Yep. That being said, we sort of went backwards and said, we'll have this much structure, we'll have this many columns and these many beams, and we'll have enough structure to carry something. How much can we get, Daktronics? And Dak kind of came back and did the math of number of pixels tall and wide, and we think you could get about here. And we said, let's buy it. Let's get it here. Let's get it. Let's get it here. And so that was So you heard a lot of people talking about how it was the first third. I think technically it was 28% or something, but the first third of that massive video board was in place for last season. Where it allowed us to give these guys something to put, some video content and other stuff on to keep, while the rest of the project was being built.
Building, right?
Yeah, we were building right next to it.
Running, kept going.
If you have a chance to see the time lapse video, it's pretty slick. Just because you see, like I said, everything gets demolished, and then the structure starts to get erected, and then there's all of a sudden this little black, not that little, but there's this black square, and then it turns, now, and then it turns on, and you're like, oh, there's a video board there, and there's still structural columns and a crane, right next to it, going all the way across the stadium, and but then just seeing the LED go up, in a time-lapse format is pretty slick. It's something I definitely recommend just for folks like us who appreciate that.
Well, just check that out. But I think you're allowed to say little when we're talking about the biggest outdoor video scoreboard in the country, right? Then 1/3 of it is kind of little.
That's right.
So,
that's true.
But so then it just kept progressing. And what was the decision like on the back end of saying, okay, we want it to be this big? Like this is the size we're going for? Is that something that was just kind of predetermined, or was it also like this is the space we have, or
budget, or is it?
I think a little bit of it all. Yeah, because it's maybe Jen may have. I'm guessing she may have touched on this a little bit, but the idea to build a new video board was I'll call it one of the main original ideas. Improve the video board in North End Zone, and it was sort of. I'm going a little sideways. I'm sorry, but it was an interesting sort of sidebar that we said, hey, we're going to put all of this structure up to carry a video board. Why wouldn't we at least build something there? Why wouldn't we? And we have this amazing club that came of it, and all new suites and stuff. But I'm going sideways now, but lead me back. Where I told myself I shouldn't go sideways, and I already did.
It was about why this size.
How it got that big. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, the width of the opening of the stadium is only another whatever, maybe 100 feet at the most, of not even really of if you go left and right. So, a little bit of it was this is the amount of space that we have, and the Crafts were all in about let's make this a big video board. Yeah.
I mean, it's still very much, and I'm sure you guys hear this. I mean, just like in athletics and pro sport, it's an arms race at times too.
Yeah, it can be.
To create thing and to be as visually dominant as possible. But I think from Woody's perspective of where we were and what we went to, I think that was also we owed it to our fans to give them something that they've watched the progression of other stadiums be built. When you think about how the Patriots have been in these infamous buildings where Super Bowls have been happening. It's like, again, this building never closes, so we're
there's always
trying to
something
do their
going on.
job.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you think about where we've won Super Bowls and infamous stadiums that we've been in, I mean, they're brand new buildings that have had pretty iconic displays. And so I think to now return it to our fans and to create the next generation of fans with the Patriots, we have this stadium now that I think is going to compare and be just as prolific as anything. I mean, I think you come here, you see the 6 Super Bowls, you see the 6 championships we've won. We have the Patriots. We have a dominant Revolution team right now. Yeah. We have Bill Belichick. We have a lot of name brands here, but now we can also make the stadium feel as if it is its own iconic piece. Yeah. Again, another reason why I think we try to drive to make Gillette Stadium, Patriot Place, this whole campus feel like a destination when it's 35 minutes from downtown Providence. It's sometimes 50 minutes from downtown Boston. You have to come here for a purpose, and we want every aspect of the building to feel as if there is something for you here, and we are constantly keeping you engaged here. So.
Yeah, it's definitely done that way, and I think it's kind of your question too. It was whenever we put out conceptuals or renderings, right, for all the different projects, where there was almost always 5 to 10 different options of these things.
Yeah,
smaller, bigger. Right. It was definitely that fitting the space and the arms race. We sometimes hear colleges say, how big is that board of like a conference competitor? And they go, well, I just want ours to be 1 foot by 1 foot bigger than
They're
that.
rivals, and it needs to be 1 foot bigger.
Yeah.
Don't care.
Yeah.
It just needs to be bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to even just like the siding of that too, is that I know we come up with all these different options, and then it's just YouTube meeting with the Kraft Group and everyone to be like, okay, that's the one. Is that kind of how? I mean, that's an oversimplification. I understand, but I mean,
it was an iterative process for sure, and the Crafts were absolutely involved. There's a whole bunch of other folks. You guys obviously met Jen and Abby, but there are a whole group of people internally that were weighing in and trying to help make the best choice. Certainly along the way, but you're right. It was rendering. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's get a couple more.
Yep.
And it did have its own undulations, up, down, left, right, so to speak, of either bigger, smaller, where it was actually exactly going to be located. Absolutely. But that being said, there were a whole bunch of people involved in that decision-making process, and we got a lot of feedback from folks to try to get it just right.
And speaking to like how we give that to other, because again, you create it, we have to operationalize it. And so again, that's maybe not a word, but again, I think of just like the ability for us to be able to have this giant, large display. It's like, it could be overwhelming to say, okay, how do we use it now? And again, Abby and Jen have done an amazing job of like seeing it from a conceptual perspective. But I think from our, from a construction perspective and from my perspective is, we don't ever want to say no to something. We want to always say yes to how do we make this happen? How do we make this happen? And so Abby and Jen, I commend them constantly of how much they can make that board seem so engaging and so great with not little effort on their part, with a lot of effort on their part. But they'll come with ideas and they'll say, okay, we need to be able to do this look and then do that look, and they'll come to me because again I'm the one who's kind of in the background making sure the system's working and the control systems are working and fixing any problems. But then they'll come and say, okay, well, we have this thing. How do we make this come to life on the paper? And we never want to say no to that. And so I think, that's also from the construction perspective of we always get these ideas on paper and we don't want to say no. Right? Essentially,
Is there a lot of coordination between your groups then to make sure it's like, okay, here's what we're thinking construction, here's what we're thinking display size, here's what we're thinking we make it work? That's got to have an open line of communication.
We're getting
right?
better. We're getting better. I feel like and I say this not just because he's sitting here, next to me, but with Doug being here, it's nice to have someone in his role who gets our side of the world, and also knows what it's going to take to operate it. So having Doug around has been, it's been a big improvement in that process, because otherwise, we are trying to make our best guess. And sometimes, we're the construction guys. I don't mean to say it that way, but we're trying to connect the dots. We're trying
Here's
to make
your display.
sure
Good luck.
it's done in time, and it didn't. Again, I keep saying this. We did it in time, and it was on budget. But that's right. We don't necessarily know what we don't know, and so it's easy for us to say this thing is awesome and it's huge. Yeah. But having Doug as a part of the process makes it so that we don't end up with something that's not usable.
Yeah, it's huge but not good. We always say it's
like Abby
junk in, junk out. Is
garbage in, garbage out.
Like Abby was saying, you just go full video and it's cropping somebody's head off and it crops off the bottom. You can't see it well. Yeah.
One of the other areas I want to touch on then too before we're done though, as part of this construction, right, is we heard from Abby and them too of the control room finally being here instead of a production truck. So I don't know. I mean, how did that come about? Because there's the LED control room. You said it's kind of right up over here, and then the other control room is back this way. Yeah. But neither of those existed, right? Is that how it was?
Yeah. I mean, I remember getting dropped in here a year ago, and we're like, we're going to complete what? Well, we're going to complete the north end zone. We're going to complete the stadium letters. We're going to complete IPTV. We're going to complete GPH, and we're going to do CBH. But also, we're going to do an IP control room, and we're also going to do an LED control room refresh. So
they want it all.
I swear, like when I have this post that I put out, and I was like, if you would have told me a year ago of like all the different iterations of things that I've completed in the last year, I was like, it's pretty much what some people do in their career. But I mean, Woody came to me and said, hey, we finally, because again, the room you guys were in yesterday, all the racks used to be in there. Okay. So you can imagine the people working there. Yeah. We're hearing the racks up and running. It was super cold. Yeah, it was tight. Cold. It was tight on space. And so we had this discussion, I think, even when I was at DAC, of like, we need to create a room that's just for the DAC system to be properly protected and on the network properly, everything. And so we carved out that space last year, and we did that. And you probably built that room probably within a month or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the first iteration,
again,
you get the equipment moved.
Get
the rack mounted equipment out.
Everything. So we had to coordinate, when are we going to move all of the fiber that leads back to there? When are we going to put the power in? How are we building out the racks? So we did it in 2 phases, and it was a lot. We did one 2-week phase, 2 weeks again. Yeah. 2 weeks where we could only take down the ribbon boards that you see in Bowl, and then we found a space later where we did north and south, and even that was a segmented phase where we took down the south first, kept the portion of the north up, went back, because again, we can't not have these displays operating. And then in the midst of all this, yes, we built a brand new IP control room that was a former space of our IT friends. We had to kick them out and renovate that.
I was going to say, how do you do that with just existing space? Did the new north end zone give more space to shift things? Or was it just kind of shifting things around and saying...
That was one of our little side jobs, is that we shuffled, I'm making it up because I don't remember exactly, but 60 people in their offices and cubes got shuffled around in order to your point, it was a domino effect. To make the space for the control room, we had to relocate the IT department. We happened to be building a new office building that's connected to the stadium. We happened to be building that and finishing at the end of last year. That timing was good. Yeah. So we could relocate people from one space, but talk about a shell game of moving people around and taking furniture apart and putting it back together over the course of days and weeks. It was quite a lot. All while all this other stuff was taking our attention and away from these folks who are trying to keep working every day.
Just trying to do their jobs.
Yes, we're trying to give them homes as quickly and cleanly as possible.
Sure. I mean, not only did we take the old IT offices, but then we had to turn that into a control room space because we had to build a rack room that was again had proper cable trays in it. Conditioning, backup on battery, and then we had to create the actual control room space and put in conduit. And again, we kind of a lot of things were on paper when I arrived, and they were moving at a pretty breakneck speed. But then, by the time last September hit, when we were in our last, 2022 season, I mean, we were just full steam ahead. And then to Abby's point, I mean, we were standing in the control room probably around June, and it was a shell of, okay, here's your room, go.
Here's the room. Here's
and then,
4 walls in the ceiling.
Here's 4 walls in the ceiling, and then
fill
in with your all of your control room gear, all of your wiring, and we did it in really good record time. We got the board on and in a pretty good time. I mean, one thing I can commend the construction team and ourselves and Jen and Abby is we dedicated ourselves, I think, to the last year of spending so much time with each other, with our partners like Daktronics, to really say, okay, what can we do to make sure that when we get this turned on, we are at the best possible place we can be.
Yeah.
And we were. I mean, I don't know how we could have gotten the control room, the LED board on any faster to give us. And I mean, we had our hiccups along the way, but we had a good, we had sometimes of a good month to not necessarily play around, but I mean, we I don't know. I feel like we put on a good show, for Tom Brady to come back and announce. I mean, that's the other thing is like, not only did we do that, but I mean, we had, when we turned on the LED, the north board, and we turned on the heavy control room, and we didn't stop. We had a Revolution game on the 30th. We had a Revolution game on the 2nd.
Yep.
We had Premier Lacrosse League on the 4th. And then we turned around and had our home opener on the 10th.
Yep.
And then we turned around a week later and had Sunday Night Football in the building for the Dolphins. And it seems like a year ago.
Right.
But it's literally just a month ago.
We were open for business day one,
we were
and it was
open
like,
for business.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's been amazing. And again, I tip my hat off to people like Woody and Dan and others in the building like Abby and Jen to just roll with what we have, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And I think you heard us on the last one too, but like a wrap-up question we like to ask though too is, what advice would you give to anyone going through a similar situation that you were in? And so we can start with you, Woody. I mean, it's hard to say similar because you guys have done this in so many phases, but when it comes to renovating, putting a giant new display or something like that, what's like some brief advice you'd give to someone in your situation?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but just communicate. Like you asked before about working together, everyone's got way more on their plate than they should, and that's not, specifically just us. I'm sure that's true across, everywhere you go. Mm-hmm. But people are doing so many things. They're doing so much more probably than they ever would have expected, and especially when it comes to these new projects, because people are taking on more than their day to day to help the process. But communicating and sharing of info, it's something I work on every day to get better at, because it inevitably makes the end product better, more likely that something's going to work the right way the first time. Mm-hmm. Sharing of information amongst groups is so invaluable, and expect kind of the unexpected, because it's just like you can think you've planned out and scheduled accordingly, and then all of a sudden your soccer team works their way through whatever that was, League's Cup, and is winning, and you've got two new dates where you were going to be working double shifts, and now you got to leave because there's an event in the building.
Got to be able to call an audible and adapt. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
how about you, Doug?
So, well, man, what would I take from this process and offer to others?
Her communication.
Communication. I mean, it is huge. I mean, I think that was key to the success we had. I would just say, be open-minded to whatever, be open-minded to whatever you think you need to have. And I think also is you need to plan for what you're going to do day one. But, these investments are not continually changing like after a year or two. You need to think about what do you expect to be doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 10, because this type of investment doesn't come around every 2 years. And so to have to go back and like ask for something that you didn't ask for the first time, you really have to think. It's hard. And again, I know that's hard to say of like, think about what you're going to be doing in 10 years. But I think that's where I have tried to push myself to say, when we open this, we're not going to do the same thing that was in here before, or we're not going to repeat what we have in one area in that same space. And that's because our fans won't be that way. our experiences won't be that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and we don't want to make an investment where you come in and you feel like, yep, same old, same old.
I saw it
Yeah.
or two,
Yeah.
and I don't need to see it again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I were a fan and I was going to the GPH room, I was coming to the North Board, I don't want to see what was there last year. And so, again, that pushes everybody to do that.
Yeah.
That pushes Abby and Jen on their game presentation. I mean, they blew everything out and we made things completely different. And so I just look at that in terms of when I'm asked for recommendations or what I tell my team or how we do things is don't ever just say, yep, we could do that and that's it. It's always, yep, we could do that, but we can also do this.
Yes.
We can
Okay.
keep going down that road.
Yeah.
So
Keep an open mind, plan ahead, and communicate. So
Communicate.
that's some good advice there. So I think you guys hit it on the head here. You nailed it with this north
Yes.
end zone renovation. We got to experience it last night. It was amazing. And thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk to us about it.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.